Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I'll be providing an update on release number 4 of UAP files from the federal government via war.gov on July 10th, 2026. So as with all of the prior releases, the files that came out today are in video, audio, image, and PDF format. And while typically in the other releases, the videos are kind of like the standout files that are released, today there were really interesting files that came out as PDFs. And so a couple of those PDFs touch on the Manhattan Project and on like these horseshoe crab shaped objects in the 1940s. So I will be getting to those kind of pieces of evidence of kind of like the existence of UAPs at the end of this video. But to kind of start, I'd like to get into what the videos were that were released today. And so the first kind of like highlighted video that was on war.gov was of a six-pointed star. And so that six-pointed star was filmed over the Yellow Sea in 2025 by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And so we did see something similar to this in a prior release, a multi-pointed star, and there was like a lot of discussion about whether those are kind of flare artifacts from a FLIR camera. With this particular video footage that was released today, it looks very similar to kind of what was up for debate in the past, and it has those same kind of like rays of light, except this one seems to possibly have more of like a kind of solid object kind of feature to the points that are coming out. Again, I assume there will be a lot of debate about that one, but it does look a little bit different from what had come out in the past, and it might be more kind of like tactile with the points. Then the second highlighted video was a UAP filmed by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command over the East China Sea in 2025. And that seems to be dangling something and kind of glittering or glistening, or it seems like the thing that is dangling off of it is kind of like flaring up a bit. And while this one isn't too interesting, like a lot of like orb videos, it's just kind of like an oddly shaped object moving through the air. I thought that this one was beautiful, very, very similar to how beautiful the windmill kind of video footage was in one of the earlier releases. And so I'll kind of like put in a longer clip here of what that kind of dangling, glowing UAP object looked like as it was moving among the clouds. Okay, and then the third highlighted video that was released, it kind of shows some grainy footage from 1996 over the western US, and it shows kind of two UAPs just flying through the frame. So it's very quick. It's probably about 1 second that they fly through, and then the government kind of slowed down that footage and presented it in that way so that you could see these like two kind of objects moving past the frame. So once again, they're kind of orb-like. They're not super interesting in appearance, but it's interesting that this was released because I think that the government is trying to show like, oh, we do have historic footage that we were saying didn't exist before or that we wouldn't release before, and like now here it is. This has been going on for a long time. And then the last highlighted video that was shown was tracking a flickering UAP over the Gulf of America in 2019. And much like the 1996 footage, this kind of object moving across the water, it is not that interesting. It essentially just looks like kind of like a dark disk or a dark orb. It's very simple. And I think it was included because it's flickering, so it looks strange. It looks more weird than a lot of the other releases. This kind of technology that is used to capture footage of UAPs, it's not super high quality. It's not super clear. We're not getting like 6K footage of any of these kinds of crafts yet. And so there are kind of like weird, strange artifacts that come from the planes that are filming this. And so that was kind of what Arrow thought as well when they kind of analyzed this footage and thought that like the flickering is not the object itself, it's coming from the technology that's filming it. And so I'll just read out kind of like what their statement is on like why there is flickering. Okay, so they said, infrared sensor systems capture information within a specific range of electromagnetic wavelengths. When a tracked source's temperature is similar to that of the surrounding environment and can visually blend into the background or appear to flicker due to dynamic contrast adjustments applied by the system's auto gain control filters. And so, I mean, before I even read that was the explanation of what was going on, that's kind of what I would have assumed, that there was some kind of just like flickering within the system itself that was trying to capture this. And then to get into kind of like the non-highlighted, non-featured videos that were released today, there were several videos that were just as you would expect, just like little tiny glowing orbs that were just kind of floating through the frame and being tracked. So I'll put up one of those here. It's not that interesting. There was a clip of twin orbs over the Middle East in 2023, and so as I've covered in other videos, like these twin orbs or twin crafts moving together, like it is very common. I haven't heard an explanation yet of why anybody thinks that this is occurring so frequently, where there's two moving together, but that's just another kind of clip that was shown of that happening. And then there was, disappointingly, what I believe is a video of a flock of birds kind of just like flying through the air and flying over clouds. And so that was captured in 2024 over the South China Sea. People are saying, oh, it looks so strange, it looks so weird, like what could this possibly be, like what would make a line and move like this? But I've seen flocks of birds moving before in like large formations, and like they seem to have like that kind of pattern of like having like some parts that are kind of staggered, and then like the individual pieces kind of like moving around a bit. And so like when you watch the footage, you can see it, there's like lots of like tiny bits that are creating this like moving line, and they don't completely stay in the same place. They're like not tethered or attached or anything. So looks like birds. And I'm not sure why that was included in this footage, except to kind of mock people that believe in this, and to kind of give them like got you, like you were stupid enough to think that that was something that was anomalous, when it's really just birds and you should have known that. So yeah, frustrating. And then my favorite videos that were released today that were not featured, was the first one that really stands out to me is an octopus type of video. And so this octopus-like UAP was filmed over the Middle East in 2023. And it's so bizarre looking. So it's like this big blob, flat looking type of object, and it kind of like moves up from like the bottom right angle, and it almost seems to like bounce off the top of the frame and then contract. And so I don't know if this footage was like zoomed in and cropped so that at the exact like place that the object kind of stops and pivots and turns, like that makes the top of the frame because it was just cropped in that manner, or if somehow this object just knew that that's what was being filmed and that's what the operator of the technology was seeing, and they made themselves kind of turn and pivot at that point. But if you've ever seen an octopus moving and turning underwater, like usually like they're kind of bulbous on top when they're kind of like slowly moving, and when they go to like dart away, shoot away underwater, like they turn and their whole body like compresses down into like a line as they like zip away. And so, I mean, this footage, it looks so much like that. It looks so octopus-like, except this is supposedly in the air, which I can't wrap my head around. It's so close to looking like an octopus that I would almost think like, is this the government fooling us and this is actually filmed underwater and it is an actual octopus and they're trying to say that it is not, that this is something in the air. But just really, really strange. The weirdest thing that I think was released in today's release. And then there was a fast-moving UAP over the eastern US in 2015. That was released, and I'll just kind of, not that interesting of an object, but I will put that up here because I really like the angle that it was shown. Kind of shows like this UAP just like flying by the plane that is recording it. And then the very last video that was posted out of everything today, it was a large, oddly shaped UAP that was captured in 2020 over the Atlantic Ocean by the US Northern Command. And it looks so weird. It's just like this big, strange, multi-tiered type of object that was moving slowly. And as soon as I saw this, I thought like, wow, that really looks like kind of like the prawn mothership from District 9. Like instantly hit me. It's like, oh, that's odd how similar these things look. But it, alas, as with all like kind of things that like look really weird, it's probably a balloon. So going along with this video of this very strange shaped object, there was a range Fowler debrief that was provided by the Northern Command that filmed this. And so they describe, quote, the phenomenon as darker maroonish in color, approximately 12 to 15 feet in height, and it was traveling with the wind. So that alone should tell you that it's almost definitely a balloon. And they said it did not maneuver or change directions, and they said it appeared similar to a large, somewhat deformed balloon. And so, I mean, make of that what you will. It doesn't look like any kind of like normal balloon that I've seen, but perhaps it was like one of those like really, really large kind of displays of balloons that you might have at a wedding or an event. And it just became malformed, and as it was like floating in the air and possibly like losing helium over a course of days. So yeah, while strange looking, it's probably nothing. And then to get into the image files, there were only 3 released today, and they came out from NASA, and they show this kind of cone-like object. And so those NASA images were filmed between November 19th and December 17th of 1996 by astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. And they say that it is an object in low Earth orbit. And so the first 2 pictures, like you can kind of make it out pretty easily based on like kind of the contrast behind the object. And then the third image, which I will zoom in on, it kind of shows this object kind of like over Earth, which is glowing, so it's harder to make out. But no speculation as to kind of what this object was, or these multiple objects were, why it would be shaped like that. Just no real information. It's completely anomalous. And then the audio files were not that interesting today. I will put in a short clip from one of them, but they were just a continuation of release number 3, where the Apollo 14 post-mission crew were issuing a debrief about light flash phenomena. So there were 4 audio files altogether. Most of them were quite long. So there was one that was about half an hour, but the other ones were between like an hour to an hour and a half. So as of right now, I've clicked through them and I've like kind of skimmed them for kind of interesting information, but there was nothing really standing out. It was very kind of like professional and just going over all the tiny details of what had happened during their mission. And I will just kind of like point out one like little clip of them talking about the light flash, and the fact that the flash itself, or the object creating the flash, was like moving while they were watching.
Next question is, was there any apparent direction of propagation? And could you tell it was coming from one side to the other, or was it just a flash?
Several times you did say from the left to the right or something like that.
Tried to correlate it, but in my case I couldn't really correlate a pattern out of it.
Yeah, I would think that the time period in which we tried to report them streak by streak, flash by flash, was representative. And it was my feeling that it was generally random during that time period, and therefore generally random throughout the times that we were noticing them.
No, I meant, could you detect that it was moving from one side to the other in general?
Yes.
It was moving in
A specific
flash.
A
specific flash, yes.
But you could see it as a travel from one side to the other?
Okay, and then to kind of get into like the fun portion of the files that were released today, kind of files that I would assume people have been waiting decades to see and to hear about. These related to 1940s reports of UAPs, and specifically activity that was happening over the Los Alamos National Laboratory. So the first kind of highlighted PDF was a transcript of a 1949 conference held at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The attendees were scientists and physicists who worked on developing the first nuclear weapons during the Manhattan Project. So as you can imagine, a lot of people are very interested in the Manhattan Project, what we were doing, why we were doing it, and have long believed that contact really ramped up and started, or not started, but it really ticked up in frequency once we developed our first kind of like nukes. And so there's long held beliefs that non-human intelligence and crafts have been completely drawn to Earth, drawn to America specifically, because of what was happening at Los Alamos and the Manhattan Project occurring. And so this transcript, it confirms that, yes, going back all those years to our nuclear development program, there were things happening. And so these scientists that were taking part in this conference, they mentioned that there were, quote, green fireballs over the vicinity of the laboratory. And their takeaway was that it could be meteors entering the atmosphere at shallow angles and high altitude. But there are a few kind of quotes that are picked out, or takeaways that are picked out from this transcript regarding like what these fireballs could have been. And so they said Dr. Edward Teller said if it's not a material body, then it could be an electron phenomenon, which possibly. I've personally seen a green meteor coming down over my neighbor's home, or a bright green orb. I'm not sure, but that could be the cause of seeing these types of UAPs. And then the highlight of the transcript also said Dr. Lincoln LaPaz, who is an expert in meteorics, said, quote, "Nothing like this, to his knowledge, has ever been observed in the case of meteorite drops." So just very, very weird to think that when there were UAPs or non-human intelligence that were visiting the laboratory to see what we were doing, what we were developing, what had been developed, that they weren't showing up as like your typical saucer craft. They weren't showing up as like these triangle craft that a lot of people have seen through the years. They showed up as green fireballs, green lights. And just the fact that green fireballs or green orbs are seen kind of like so infrequently, and the fact that that is what was being seen repeatedly over the laboratory is very, very strange. It makes you wonder about when you do see a green one, if maybe that is some type of craft that's used for a very specific, like scientific or monitoring purpose. All speculation, we have no idea. But it could be the reason why when people are having just like standard, genuine telepathic daily contact, what they are seeing is like pure white or light blue or golden orbs. They don't see green, but when the green shows up, it seems to possibly be more scientific in nature. Okay, and then there was also a PDF released of a 1949 U.S. Air Force Air Intelligence Division study about flying object incidents in the United States. And that one, they kind of talk about like what their worries are about what's being seen in the skies. They said that the identification of that object cannot be readily accomplished, so no answers from them back then on what was going on. But they were talking about how they worried that what they were seeing might have been intelligence activities from the Soviet Union. And then the kind of like real standout, huge, fun, if you could call it fun, kind of PDF that was released today was a 1948 report about 100 different UFO sightings from 1947 to 1948 by Air Materiel Command regarding Project Sign. And so Project Sign ran from 1948 to 1949, and it investigated the nature and origin of UFOs. And so while the actual kind of like text of that file was not super duper interesting, it was just kind of like almost like a bullet point list of all these different sightings that had occurred. There were pictures that were included, and one of those pictures in particular is amazing. So the pictures that were shown are of this horseshoe shaped craft. And so it is sort of triangular in shape, except the front nose of the object is kind of like rounded, and then the back of the object has like this large curve, so very much like a horseshoe. And I believe that David Grush had spoken about this before and saying that like these files need to be released on what these craft look like. And so in the initial picture that was taken, it almost looks like this horseshoe crab shaped craft is like kind of like falling out of the sky, and it's like dark and silhouetted against the background of the sky. And then there's a kind of like zoomed in image of what appears to be like that same picture. And then shockingly, I don't know if this is the exact same craft or if this is a different craft that was built, captured, recovered, or what's going on, but it looks like there is a metallic horseshoe crab shaped craft that was just kind of like sitting on the ground. And like that picture in particular is like so high detail, so crisp, so clear. And it's absolutely amazing to see. And it seems like, again, because this is from the 1940s, things were different back then. The way that crafts appeared were different. A lot more people were seeing like these types of flying disc, like flying saucer types of shapes, and sometimes they would have like little tops on them or tops and bottoms and lights going around the edges. It's just, it almost seems like this is like an artifact of a different time when crafts look different and appear different to people. Because I follow like a lot of different reports of like what people are seeing in the skies, and it's just been so long since I've heard anybody mentioning seeing these like horseshoe crab shaped objects. And but there it is in like all of its glory, it released in today's release. Yeah, so I hope that you enjoyed kind of hearing about all of this. If you have any questions about any of the kind of files that were in the release and you think that I might be able to help, or if I have an opinion on something, please let me know and I will get back to you. So thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.